All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are reading Uprising. This is the first chapter on Bella. I'm going to start on page 13 because that's where most classes got to. But if you did not get to page 13, just make sure you read her chapter up to that point before following along with this audio. You can see in the back here, I included some tips on how to take notes if you choose to take notes. There will be reading checks, so taking notes can help you remember things. They also give you a few extra points on your reading checks. So here we go. Top of page 13, right where the page break is. You should probably tell them you're 15, Pietro said the next morning as he walked Bella to her first day at her new job. I am 15, Bella said. Really? Pietro said, looking at her sideways in a way that made Bella notice his eyelashes, as long as a girl's, curving up from his dark eyes. Well, I think so, Bella said, as near as Mama can figure. Of course, it's written down at the church back home, but it's not like we could have bothered the priest to look up the baptism records for someone like me. She was babbling. She stopped talking and clenched her teeth firmly together because she didn't want Pietro to think she was foolish. She concentrated on dodging a peddler who seemed intent on shoving his cart right into her path. She narrowly missed stepping out in front of a huge horse, pulling a wagon full of, is that ice? Ice in the summertime, glistening between layers of straw? Careful, Pietro said, because while she was gawking at the ice, another peddler had rammed his cart into her leg. Pietro jerked her away at the last minute, so it was only a glancing blow. But now he was leading her through an impossibly narrow gap between a man puffing on a cigar and a lady with a towering hat. Is it always this crowded? Bella managed to pant. Crowded? Pietro glanced around as if he just noticed the cigar man and the hat lady. This is nothing. On Saturdays, a lot of people don't come out until later in the day. Bella didn't even want to think about what the sidewalk would be like later in the day. Already, there were probably more people crammed in around her than lived in her entire village of Callia. Even on Saints' days back home, when everyone marched up to the church, nobody packed together this tightly. And those were people she knew. These were total strangers, jostling against her, their elbows brushing hers, their packages jabbing against her chest. Bella longed to clutch Pietro's arm, as she had yesterday, to cling to him for protection. But somehow she couldn't. Touching him would mean something different today. She'd lain awake last night trying to remember how close a cousin Pietro was. Was her grandfather his grandmother's brother? Or was the connection her father and Pietro's mother? It hadn't mattered back in Italy. Pietro had grown up in another village. She remembered seeing him only once at a funeral. But now, what were the rules in America about cousins getting married? Even in the dark, her back against the wall, two of Signora Luciano's filthy children snoring beside her, just thinking that question had made her blush. She felt the heat rising in her cheeks now, in the daylight. She tilted her head back, hoping for a cool breeze on her face. But the air around her was hot and still and stale. In America, it seemed, even air got trapped in the crowd. Bella gasped. What's that? She asked, pointing upward. Just more tenement buildings, Pietro said, shrugging. No, there, she said. Those metal things running down the side of the building like caterpillars. There's one there, and she narrowly missed poking a man in the eye. He scowled at her, spat, and rushed on. You mean the fire escapes? The stairs on the outside of the buildings? Pietro asked. The Luciano's building has some. Didn't you notice? They're so people can climb down from the higher floors if there's a fire. Bella counted windows. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the apartment buildings were 5 stories high. Back home, except for the priest and 1 or 2 families who actually owned land, everyone lived in 1-story, 1-room mud houses. The women did their cooking in the doorways most nights. Their women did their cooking in the doorways. Most nights, no one bothered lighting a lamp or a candle before going to bed on the dirt floor. Fire wasn't a problem. Bella tried to imagine living on the fifth story of some wood-framed apartment building. She imagined flames licking up through the wooden floor. She shivered despite the heat. Pietro was chuckling. I forgot how strange everything seemed when I got here last year, he said. The littlest things. Engraved buttons, food in boxes, bridges, doorknobs, traffic cops. Now I don't give any of it a second thought. Don't worry, you'll stop notice things after a while, too. Bella wasn't sure she wanted to stop noticing. She was thinking how grateful she would be for a fire escape, if she ever needed one. Now remember, at work today, don't let them see how much you don't know, Pietro said. Just do what they tell you. And it's payday. Saturdays are when they give out the money for the whole week. But they won't give you anything, because this is just a practice day, a tryout. They want to see if you can do the work. What do you mean they won't give me anything? Bella asked, horrified. Pietro, I have to make money. For my family, for Mama, for... She wondered how he could have misunderstood so completely, how he could have agreed to such a ridiculous thing on her behalf. Didn't he know how close her family was to starving? Couldn't he tell by looking at her, Bella, with the bones of her face jutting out in hard knobs, her skin stretched tight, her eyes sunken in? The thin stew Signora Luciana had fed them for dinner, the slice of hard bread she'd given Bella for breakfast, that would have been 3 days' worth of food back home. They'd had a bad harvest after bad harvest ever since Papa died. Why else would Bella have come halfway around the world to this strange place, except that her family was desperate? They have to pay me, Bella said. And if they won't, I'll work somewhere else. Calm down, Pietro said. He looked around as if worried that someone else in the crowd would overhear. This is just how they do things here. Any other place in New York City, it'd be the same. I got you the best job I could find for a girl. You work hard today, next week they'll pay you. And then I'll send the money to your mama right away. You will? Bella asked. Oh, thank you. She walked on, not minding how thick the crowd was that she had to plow through. As far as she was concerned, she would walk over burning coals if it meant help for her family. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory was at the top of a 10-story building. Bella froze on the sidewalk for a moment, looking up and up and up. It made her dizzy to bend her head back so far. This was like staring at the mountains back home, except the mountains sloped down gradually, and the Triangle building shot up straight from the ground to the sky, its sheer steep walls blocking out the sun. Something like terror gripped Bella, and her thoughts tangled. I can't work in a big fancy place like this. Like that. I'll starve, and so will Mama and the little ones. Oh, how far away the ground must look from those windows up there. She swallowed hard, and the only words that slipped out were a question. No fire escapes? Not here, Pietro said. Not in this part of the city. There are hoity-toity rich people just around the corner. They think fire escapes are ugly. But if there's a fire... Bella wasn't really thinking about fire. She was thinking about falling, or failing, or being fired. There's probably a fire escape at the back, I guess. Or they have extra stairways inside. This is New York City. They have rules about things like that. Now come on, you can't be late your first day. They went inside and stepped into a marvel called an elevator, a little box that whisked them up to the 9th floor. Other girls were crowded into the box with them. Girls in fancy hats and elegant skirts and those shining white shirtwaists. Bella guessed these girls were royalty of some sort. She might have been brave enough to ask them who they were, except that they all seemed to be speaking in other languages. Even one girl who looked Italian was chattering away in a strange tongue that Bella couldn't understand at all. The box stopped and the doors opened. The other girls streamed out, rushing towards rows of machines on long tables. Pietro led Bella to a man standing at the end of one of the tables. This is Signor Carlotti, Pietro said. Signor Carlotti, this is Bella. Scissors, Signor Carlotti said, handing her a pair. When the shirtwaists come to you, cut the loose threads. Actually, that wasn't exactly what he said. Bella Bella couldn't quite make sense of any of his words. His accent was even murkier than Signora Luciano's. But he demonstrated as he talked, lifting a shirtwaist from the table, snipping threads, dropping the finished shirtwaist into a basket. Another girl sat nearby, already slicing threads with her own pair of scissors, with such reckless speed that Bella feared that her blades would slip through the cloth as well. Buongiorno, Bella started to say to the girl. My name is... No talking, Signor Carlotti said. Work. At least that's what Bella guessed he said, because he held his finger to his lips and glared. Bella picked up her first shirtwaist. The garment was delicate and fine, with frills around the collar and gathers at the waist. It was like holding stitched air. Bella turned it over carefully, searching for hanging threads. Ah, there's one. She lifted her scissors, angled the blades just so, gently pulled the handles together. Faster, Signor Carlotti said. You take that long over every thread, you will never earn a cent in this factory. You will be out in the streets and even Pietro won't be able to save you. Your family will starve. It was amazing that Bella could understand what he was saying without comprehending a single word. Bella glanced up and saw that the other girl had whipped through 3 shirtwaists in the time it had taken Bella to cut 1 thread. Bella's decided that if the other girl wasn't afraid of ripping the shirtwaist to shreds, Bella shouldn't worry either. She sliced through the rest of the threads, dropped the shirtwaist in the basket, and picked up a new one. That's better, Signor Carlotti grunted, or something like that. You're set then, Pietro said. Goodbye. I've got to go to my job. I'll meet you on the sidewalk outside after work. Okay, Bella said. She wanted to flash him a big smile, to tell him how grateful she was that he'd be waiting for her, that she wouldn't have to find her way back to the Lucianos alone. But Signor Carlotti was glaring again, so she dipped her head down over the shirtwaist. She resisted the impulse to watch Pietro walking back to the elevator. Pietro, Bella thought. Such a nice name, such a handsome man, and so kind to me. Faster, Signor Carlotti said. Bella forced herself to stop thinking about Pietro. Cut, 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 drop. Pick up a new shirtwaist. Cut, 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 drop. Pick up a new shirtwaist. This was not a difficult job. Bella's little sister Julia, who still sucked her thumb and clung to Mama's skirt most of the time, would have been capable of doing it. But Bella found herself having to concentrate hard, especially with Signor Carlotti hovering over her, watching her every move, yelling faster every time she so much as hesitated picking up the next shirtwaist. The pile of shirtwaists with hanging threads kept growing, and Bella couldn't even stop long enough to look up and see where they were coming from, who was bringing them over. Her neck grew stiff, but she didn't dare tilt her head back to relax it, even for a second. Suddenly, Signor Carlotti grabbed up one of the shirtwaists Bella had just dropped into the basket. You idiot girl, he screamed, shaking the shirtwaist in her face. Can't even handle a simple job like this. Look at the thread you missed. The offending thread unfurled from a hiding place in the sleeve. It dangled in front of Bella's eyes, a mark of shame. I'll fire you if I find another one of these. The triangle label stands for quality and pride, not dangling threads, not shoddy work by useless girls like you. Maybe that's what he said. Maybe what he actually said was that she was being fired, right then and there. But Bella was determined not to hear that. I'm sorry, she said, snatching the shirtwaist from his hands, slicing through the thread. I'll never make another mistake again, I promise. Her hands were shaking when she turned her attention to the next shirtwaist. I can't be fired, she told herself. I cannot lose this job. Tu es alle mal ihnen Zeitchen Seder, the other girl said, which was totally incomprehensible. But it made Bella look up. She saw that the other girl was showing her something, turning the shirtwaist in her own lap this way and that. Oh, Bella thought. The other girl meant that she'd found a pattern to her work. The hanging threads were in pretty much the same places on every shirtwaist, so the girl cut them in the same order each time. That way, she never missed any. Grazie, Bella said. I understand. Back to work, Signor Carlotti screamed. No chit-chat. Bella settled into a pattern of her own. Front, right side, back, left side. Then a quick once-over just to make sure she hadn't missed anything. Cut, 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 drop. Cut, 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 drop. Something shifted in Bella's brain. She was still whipping through the shirtwaist as fast as she could, but she didn't dare look away from her work, even for a second. But she found that every now and then she could allow herself the luxury of thinking about something besides shirtwaists and scissors and hanging threads. She let herself notice the glorious rumble of the rows and rows of sewing machines, all racing together. She'd gotten a quick glimpse of them before she sat down and started cutting. How Mama would have stared to see such a thing. Sewing was Mama's least favorite chore. When the news had come to Kalia that they had machines to do such things out in the rest of the world, Mama had talked about it for days. Wouldn't it be nice to be that free? She'd asked Bella wistfully. Just tell a machine, this is your job now, and you can go out and enjoy the sunshine. No hunching over a needle all the time. No worrying about mending and patching. Signor Carlotti bent over in front of Bella, screaming right into her face. You're slowing down again. The shirtwaists are piling up. Work faster. Spittle flew out of his mouth and landed on Bella's eyebrow, but she didn't dare take her hands off the shirtwaist to wipe it away. Oh, Mama, Bella thought with an ache in her heart. You didn't know the sewing machine still left some work for girls to do. And the machines are so fast I can never keep up. But she had to try. Bella worked for hours, the shirtwaist flying through her hands. About noon, the machine suddenly lapsed into silence. Grazie, grazie, Madonna mia, Bella thought. They're going to give us a break for lunch. The other girls put her scissors down, stood up, and stretched. Bella smiled at her. She dropped one last shirtwaist into the basket and reached out to place her scissors on the table too. But Signor Carlotti shoved the scissors back at her, back into her hand. Oh, no. You do not get a lunch break, you lazy girl. You've done nothing all morning. Look at all these shirtwaists you haven't finished. You say sit right there and keep working until they're done. Bella was pretty sure that was what he was saying because he gestured at the pile of shirtwaists as he pushed Bella back into her chair. Bella wanted to fire back angry words of her own. But you aren't even paying me today. I'm just learning. How can you expect me to keep up? This isn't right. I'm not a machine. Even back in Kalia, the landowners gave the laborers a chance to eat lunch. But Bella remembered Pietro saying this was the best job he could find for her. She remembered him saying that it would be the same anywhere else in New York. She remembered that Julia, her little sister, had had so little food lately that sometimes she didn't have enough energy to play. She just lay on her blanket, staring up at nothing. I can skip lunch today if it means that next week Mama will have money for food for Julia, Bella told herself. I can bear anything for Julia. Bella picked up the next shirtwaist. The rest of the day passed in a blur. The factory became stiflingly hot by early afternoon, and sweat poured down Bella's face, but she forced herself to ignore it. A blister rose on her thumb where the scissors rubbed, but she just shifted position, sliding the scissor handle further up on her hand. Her back ached, her head ached, her neck ached, her hand ached. She didn't let herself care. Bella was so dizzy, lightheaded, and hungry by late in the day that she was back to needing to concentrate intensely on each shirtwaist, to focus precisely on each snip of her scissors. So she didn't notice the screaming across the room right away. The girl sitting beside her had to nudge Bella's arm. Zenor, the girl said and pointed. Bella looked up. 2 tables away, a red-faced man was screaming while 2 other men stood on either side of him, tugging on his arms. The screaming man was thin and stooped over. The men pulling at him were big and beefy and mean-looking. They were screaming too, but their voices didn't carry. Bella could only hear what the thin man said. Of course, Bella couldn't understand any of his words, but she could tell he was very mad, and he wasn't giving up, no matter how much the other men tugged at him. The men knocked his glasses from his face. They ripped his shirt. They slapped him and lifted him and carried him out. But still the man kept screaming, kept kicking and pulling back. Suddenly, all around Bella, the other workers stood up. It was like watching a dance, everyone making the same movement at once, except for 1 or 2 laggards who were out of step. Bella was one of the laggards, but she sprang up only a split second after the other learner girl. Bella didn't know why, but obviously everyone was supposed to stand. The wheels of the sewing machines kept turning for a few moments, as if, being machines, they were left out of the dance. Bella could see fabric bunching, threads snagging. Oh no, those shirtwaists will be ruined, Bella fretted. But no one else seemed to care. People were streaming past her, rushing for the elevator. The girls Bella thought were royalty, some women with matronly faces, a few men and boys who worked on this floor. All of them were rushing for the exits at once. They knocked over baskets of shirtwaists, they trampled the shirtwaists underfoot, and they were all yelling and talking, even laughing at once. Is this how they always act at the end of the day? Bella wondered. Or just Saturdays when they've been paid and they know they'll have the next day off? In the confusion of strained languages Bella didn't understand, she started noticing that one word was being repeated over and over again. Strike. Boys and girls yelled it, women murmured it wonderingly, men whispered it in hushed tones. What's a strike? Bella asked. But in the hubbub, nobody seemed to hear her. Bella let the crowd carry her into the elevator, out into the building. All right, I'm going to stop here. It's on page 25. You guys remember have to read till page 31. All right, have a good day. Bye.